Welcome to the Heartification Podcast, where I interview people on how art has affected their lives and what it means to them. Art has a very special place in my life. It not only makes me feel happy, but it allows me to make others feel special. This podcast is all about how art has made an impact on others' lives, for all ages, all backgrounds, and all walks of life. You can find more about this podcast guest in my show notes. Without further ado, let's welcome my next guest. He was an astronaut on the Space Shuttle, Columbia. Please welcome my next guest, Lawrence DeLucas.
Good to meet you.
Yes, thank you so much for doing this. So the first question I always ask is, how do you define art?
Yeah, I saw that question, and I think it's connected to imagination and creativity. I don't have an exact definition for it. I probably should have looked something up, but I didn't. I think in science, being creative is very important. I can tell you about so many very bright people that could do whatever you needed them to do, but creating new ideas is very important in science if you want to succeed. So I think artwork is creativity. It can be artwork, a painting, but it can also be artwork or creativity in your mind too. I think both.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. Like, my definition is any form you're able to express yourself and, let out your emotions and your creativity.
Yep.
And what art forms are you exposed to?
In terms of what I do, I do a lot of teaching in terms of STEM outreach to students, both in the elementary school level and also high school and even in college. And, I often, when I teach, I give them a problem, the students a problem, and I ask them to come up with a creative way to find an answer to that problem, a solution. And that's what I've always been confronted with in the lab. And I think for me anyway, I have 43 patents. I've invented both machines and patents on drugs that I say drugs, pharmaceuticals to help fight different diseases. But it's usually, especially for technology development, it comes to me out of frustration. You're in the lab doing something and you're frustrated with perhaps the repetitiveness of what you have to do. And it would often make me, say to myself, boy, if there was just an automated way to do this and this, and that led me to develop the first nano-crystalization machine. You see these all over the world now. And I wrote a patent on it, actually formed a company, and we sold many of those initial machines that we built. And instead of, manually pipetting, I thought, why don't we have something like an inkjet printer that, in a little 96 well plate has 96 little syringes that could put out little small volumes of liquid all at the same time, and then mix it with maybe different solutions that might help it crystallize. And then maybe another machine that covers it and seals it. And then the next day you want to look at them, right? And I thought, wow, to look at all those little 96 wells, and let's say we make 20 of these little plates at the same time. Now you got 20 times 96. Even my students didn't want to do that. And I thought, why can't we develop a software system that automatically can look in each well, go along and look at each well, and if there's a crystal in there, tell you that there's a crystal. How would it know? All crystals have straight edges, they have sharp corners. And so in the software, we could have the machine, the vision system, automatically look for anything with a straight edge, longer than a certain distance. And also, we grow protein crystals in my lab, and with ultraviolet light, a protein crystal will actually glow. It'll have a blue hinge to it. And so I thought, with UV light, we could automatically detect the protein crystals. And so we ended up using both of those capabilities in the software system and developed a second machine to tell you, it'll automatically scan all the plates. It's all automated, and it'll say in maybe tray number 5 in well A45, there's a crystal, and then you knew where to go look for your crystals. So it saved us a lot of time, and we sold those machines all over the world also. So it's just a matter of imagination, and for me in the lab, it was always frustration not wanting to do something manually that I knew you could automate.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool with the crystals and how you design that.
And I have a colleague that works in the same company as I do. She now also works at Johnson Space Center, and she uses artwork to teach students really to be creative. And so she does STEM outreach where students have to, for example, I remember one of the projects she gave the students was to create a habitat on the surface of Mars with artwork. And she gives prizes to the top, solutions that students would find, and it causes all the students to kind of think creatively and put their creative thoughts on paper.
Yeah, definitely. That's really cool. And did art help you in any way to overcome the intensive training as an astronaut?
So one of the important things for me, if you knew me a little better, I'm a very hyper person. I always have been. I get excited, I guess, more than you should about what I'm doing, and as a result, the unfortunate part of that is I have a tendency toward high blood pressure. And so I decided, I didn't want to have to take medication to get accepted to be an astronaut. And I knew with high blood pressure, that could be what stopped me from being selected. And so it turns out there are special clinics where you can meditate. And I went to one of these clinics because they claimed they could help you lower your blood pressure, your heart rate, everything. And it turns out that in your mind, one of the things you do while you look at a monitor that's talking about your blood pressure, it shows you your blood pressure and your heart rate. So you're hooked up, taking your blood pressure, but you're watching this monitor and you start trying to think of peaceful things. You can look at something that's peaceful, like an ocean, artwork of an ocean. And so they gave me kind of images that should make me feel more relaxed. And it was artwork. And boy, it was amazing. It lowered my heart rate about 10 beats per minute. But more importantly, it lowered my blood pressure below, the normal 120/80. I actually was lower than what you really need to be normal. And actually, when I went for my physical to become an astronaut, I started thinking about those same images, and it helped get me through. I passed everything with flying colors. And so, that's one way. I don't think without that training, who knows, I may have been told you can't be an astronaut because you've got high blood pressure. It turns out now you are allowed to take medication for that. But back when I did it, we didn't know that.
Wow, that's really cool. And, that just shows how art can be used in many ways to help people.
Yes, so true.
And how do you use your creativity in your scientific experiments?
So again, it's again, I'm always looking for something that will shorten the time to get an experiment done or get us to the result we want faster. That's so important because you're always wanting to find that answer in science as fast as possible. And I remember working on one project where we were trying to purify a protein so that we could crystallize it and determine the three-dimensional structure where every atom is within thousandths of an angstrom. And to do that, we first had to get it pure, and we couldn't get it pure. And as a result, we couldn't get good crystals. And so again, I said, let's create a purification factory. And so there's many different ways to purify a protein, different types of media you can use in long columns. They're called chromatography columns. And so what I did is I took about 10 of these different purification techniques, and simultaneously had 10 columns running all at the same time. And I had pumps kind of delivering the fluid to the columns all from one pump, because I didn't have a lot of money to buy individual pumps for each column. But it was just a way to get the answer I needed faster. So what started out over a year, we were frustrated we couldn't get crystals. Once I did that, one of those columns gave us very pure protein, and about a month later, it led to us crystallizing the protein and doing the structure. And it was a protein very important in diabetes research. So it's just an example where just kind of thinking out of the box, trying to be creative, helped me get the answer I needed a lot faster.
Yeah, definitely. That's really awesome. And these different ways where you can do stuff instead of just sticking to the path of, maybe manually doing it or just, failure after failure. You can just be creative and come up with a really different way to do it, which is exactly what you did, which is really cool.
Yeah. Would you consider poetry a form of artwork? I would.
Yes, definitely. I would. Yes.
So, on my mission, I worked usually 10 hours straight. And then it was time to, eventually go to sleep. And we sleep in these kind of little boxes. Okay. And I would get in there. And back then, we had tape, because this is back in 92 where everything wasn't digital. So I had poems on a tape recorder, and I would listen to poems because I was so pumped and so excited while I'm up in space that it helped calm me down, so I would more quickly fall asleep just listening to poetry.
That's awesome. Yeah. And you were also a developer of patents, like you said. So how is your creativity a part of a winning patent?
Again, it's all about, a problem that you're confronted with in the lab, and how do you solve that problem? And so that's what led me to think of automation and ways to quickly accomplish what we were doing manually. So a lot of my patents had to do with developing machinery that would automate the process. Some of the patents, I have patents on crystallizing proteins that we then did drug discovery with. And I'm not so sure for that. It was just following a routine procedure, and it led to, once we had the structure, then we could patent the drug discovery part of that.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. And in your podcast interview with my dad, you told a story of how when the pea was ejected into space, it created a beautiful and artistic pattern. So can you tell me about that?
Yes. And so whenever we go to the bathroom, at least the urine, the pee, it's in a container, and we don't keep that on board. We eject it out into space. And so if the sun was hitting, just right against the shuttle, and you do it, the as soon as it hits outer space, of course, it's extremely cold. So it immediately freezes into crystals of all different sparkly shapes. And just something about the way the sun was hitting it, it sparkled, and you'd see this beautiful kind of pattern, almost like, if you think of tinsel that you put on a Christmas tree, but maybe cut it up, or sprinkles that you see sometimes on people that sparkle. It was like that, but a shower of it going out into space as it left the space shuttle. And I just loved to watch it. It was just beautiful to look at.
Yeah, that's amazing. When you first think of art, like, you think of painting and like dancing and all kind of the visual arts and stuff like that. But when you actually think about it, and as I said before, my definition is anyway but you can express yourself. It's so many different things. And the pea getting injected into space and creating this artistic pattern. I mean, who would have thought of that?
Yeah, no one. Probably only I loved looking at it, although the other crew did too. So, but I couldn't wait till we did a dump, and I would go up and watch it just because it was so beautiful to look at. Funny that someone would call that beautiful, but it was.
Yeah, it's really awesome. And art can be therapeutic, and it can help people through some difficult situations. So has art ever helped you through a difficult situation?
Well, I can't think of a better one than what I told you about my blood pressure. I remember looking at different scenes, even in scenes of mountains. Part of the Himalayas, I had a picture, and the ocean, and I would just stare at it and kind of dream, how beautiful it is. And it makes your heart rate go down when you do this. It's amazing therapy. And so when I finally went for my physical without the feedback of a machine telling me my heart rate or anything, I knew how to calm myself down by just thinking about those same scenes, and it worked.
Yeah, that's awesome. And are you attracted to any particular artist?
Whoa. No, probably don't know enough about the different artwork that's out there to tell you. I'm not a connoisseur of most artwork, but I have a favorite poem, "The Cremation of Sam McGee." I don't know if you've ever heard that poem.
Don't
It's
think
kind
so.
of it's kind of funny. It's a very long poem, and one of the programs that I'm a part of is a leadership program where we bring students in and try to tell them what it takes to be a leader. And, we bring into that program many people who are former Congressional Medal of Honor winners. That's the highest medal you can get in the military. And many of them were wounded in battle. They saved lives of other soldiers and so forth. Well, one in particular spent 6 years in Hanoi prison. It's the worst prison you can imagine, and they were in a block all by themselves that was about 8 feet by 6 feet, and right next to them would be another block, all light tight, right? And so no way to communicate except you could bang on the wall, and the soldier next to you that was a prisoner could hear the banging. And to keep them busy, I'll never forget when this one Congressional Medal of Honor winner said the way we would pass time is we would recite poetry that we knew to each other by coming up with a Morse code, so to speak, by tapping on the wall. And he said the favorite poem we all had was "The Cremation of Sam McGee," the very same poem that I loved from when I was a little kid. And so it's kind of funny how it helped them through a terrible ordeal. And, poetry like that always helped me, calm down. So,
Wow, yeah, that's really cool, banging on the wall. I mean, again, with creativity, who would have thought of that?
yeah, I know. It's amazing. And it was funny. That's a very long poem. It took me a while to memorize the whole poem, but he said, he didn't know the whole poem, but the guy next to him knew some of it, and the guy next to him had heard of it and knew some. And so together they were able to eventually recite the whole poem.
Wow, that's amazing. And are you attracted to any particular art form?
I think I love artwork of nature, and if it's mountain scenery, ocean, the lakes, usually nature. But also, I'm a big lover of animals, and artwork I've seen of animals. I can't even tell you who did the artwork, but I know I love to appreciate. I do appreciate really wonderful artwork like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And my certification project is about giving back to the community. So, how do you give back to the community?
Oh, I probably have given presentations to elementary students, high school students, and I talk about my career, usually to high school and college students, and the trials and tribulations. Sometimes things work for me and you have to persevere. And I've probably given, since I came back from space, which was in 1992, I wouldn't be surprised if I've given 2,000 presentations. I also am part of this leadership program, and I interact with the students. I give a career talk to those students and go to all the meetings with them. And those students actually are high school students, and they have to compete for scholarships. So I not only donate money for those scholarships, but I help raise money for the program. So that's one of the ways that I give back. Plus, I was a teacher for many years at the university. And when I retired from the university and joined Aerospace Corporation, I wrote a proposal and got a STEM grant from NASA. and it involved teaching students at a community college physics and biochemistry. So I've participated in that way also, giving back.
Yeah, that's awesome. And how would you like people to get in touch with you?
Well, my email is probably the best way. I have a personal email that's just my last name, DeLucas, followed by my first name, Larry, no period in between, at gmail.com. And so when I have time, I do answer students. It may take me a while because I'm actually working 2 jobs right now, one for aerospace and then one for, I'm president of a company that I formed while I was at the university.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Yes, I was happy to do it anytime.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Remember, if you want to find out more about this guest, please go to my show notes where I have all the links needed. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to my podcast series and help me by sharing it, leaving a rating, and a comment. I hope you join me on my next podcast. Bye for now.